I found my bags at the door with a note. Just a few days at the nursing home. My son said it was temporary just to renovate the house. Later I found out they gave my room to the dog. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this, and comment the city you're watching from. My name is Cheryl, and at 67 I thought I knew what betrayal felt like. I was wrong. The morning started like any other Thursday. I was making Thomas his favorite pancakes when I heard the front door open. My son walked in with that serious expression he'd been wearing more often lately. The one that made my stomach tighten with worry. "Mom, we need to talk," he said, not meeting my eyes. Camila appeared behind him, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her phone screen. She never looked at me directly anymore. Not since she'd moved in 2 years ago and slowly began rearranging my life to suit hers. "What's wrong, honey?" I asked Thomas, wiping my hands on the apron I'd worn for 30 years in this kitchen. "The house needs some major repairs," he said, his voice flat. "Foundation issues, electrical problems. It's not safe for you to stay here while we fix everything." My heart sank. I'd noticed some creaking in the floors, but nothing that seemed dangerous. "How long will it take?" "A few weeks, maybe a month," Camila spoke up, finally lifting her eyes from her phone. "We found a nice place for you to stay temporarily. It's clean, safe, and they have activities." The way she said activities made me feel like a child being promised toys to stop crying. "Can't I stay with you and Thomas at your apartment?" I asked, though I already knew the answer from their exchanged glances. "Mom, you know our place is too small," Thomas said. "This is better. Trust me." An hour later, I stood on my front porch watching Thomas load my hastily packed suitcases into his car. Everything had happened so fast. Camila handed me a small piece of paper. "The address," she said. "They're expecting you." I looked at the paper. Sunset Manor Senior Living. The words made my chest tight, but I told myself it was temporary. Thomas said so. The ride was quiet. Thomas kept his eyes on the road while I stared out the window at neighborhoods I'd lived near for 40 years, wondering when I'd see them again. Sunset Manor looked pleasant enough from the outside. Clean brick building, well-maintained gardens, large windows that let in plenty of light. A woman in scrubs met us at the entrance with a warm smile and a clipboard. "Mrs. Patterson? I'm Linda, the admissions coordinator. Your son explained the situation. Don't worry, we'll take good care of you." I wanted to correct her, tell her I wasn't really a resident, just a temporary guest. But the words stuck in my throat as Thomas hugged me goodbye. "I'll call you soon, Mom," he said, already backing toward the door. "Take care of yourself." Then he was gone, and I was standing in the lobby of an assisted living facility with 2 suitcases and a heart full of questions I was afraid to ask. My room was small but clean. A single bed, a dresser, a chair by the window that looked out onto the courtyard. I unpacked slowly, hanging my few clothes in the narrow closet, placing my photographs on the dresser. My wedding picture. Thomas as a baby. The house I'd called home for 37 years. That evening I called Thomas. The phone rang 5 times before he answered. "Hi, Mom. How are you settling in?" "It's fine," I said, though my voice cracked. "When do you think I can come home?" "Soon, Mom. We're getting estimates from contractors. I'll let you know." The call lasted 3 minutes. 2 weeks passed. Then a month. My calls to Thomas became shorter. His excuses more elaborate. Camila never answered when I called their apartment. It was Margaret, my new roommate's friend, who finally told me the truth. She'd been visiting her daughter nearby and decided to drive past my house, curious about the renovations. "Cheryl," she said gently, sitting beside me in the common room. "There are no construction crews at your house. But there's a doghouse in your old bedroom window." The doghouse. Those 2 words echoed in my mind for hours after Margaret told me. I sat in my narrow bed that night, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of what I'd heard. My bedroom. The room where I'd slept next to my husband for 23 years, where I'd rocked Thomas as a baby during those sleepless nights, where I'd cried alone after the funeral, now had a dog bed in the window. I called Thomas the next morning, my hands trembling as I dialed. "Mom, hey." His voice sounded rushed. "I'm actually in a meeting right now. Can I call you back?" "Thomas, I need to ask you something." "Mom, I really can't talk. I'll call you tonight, okay?" He hung up. He didn't call that night. I tried again the next day. This time Camila answered. "Oh, hi, Cheryl," she said, her voice artificially sweet. "Thomas is at work." "Camila, someone told me there's no construction happening at the house." Silence stretched between us. Then she laughed, a sound like broken glass. "Who told you that? You know how neighbors like to gossip. The work is happening inside, not outside. You wouldn't see it from the street." "What about the dog bed in my bedroom window?" Another pause. "Cheryl, you must be confused. Maybe you should talk to the staff there about your memory. Sometimes moving can be disorienting for people your age. People my age." As if being 67 made me incapable of understanding reality. That afternoon, I sat in the common room with 3 other women who'd become my reluctant companions. Dorothy, 81, whose daughter promised to visit every week but hadn't shown up in 2 months. Helen, 75, whose son moved her here after her hip surgery and never moved her back. And Ruth, 69, whose family said her apartment was too much responsibility for someone her age. "They all say the same things," Dorothy said, working on a crossword puzzle. "It's temporary. It's for the best. It's just until things get sorted out. My daughter comes by when she needs something," Helen added, not looking up from her knitting. "Last month she needed me to sign some papers. Before that, she wanted my jewelry for her daughter's wedding." Ruth nodded knowingly. "My son calls it simplifying my life. Funny how their lives got more complicated right when mine got simplified." I listened to their stories, hearing echoes of my own situation in each one. The promises, the excuses, the gradual realization that temporary had become permanent without anyone asking if that was what we wanted. "Have any of you tried to leave?" I asked. The 3 women exchanged glances. Dorothy set down her pencil. "Where would we go? They've made sure we don't have anywhere else." That evening I called Thomas again. This time he answered, but I could hear Camila talking in the background, her voice sharp and impatient. "Mom, what's wrong now?" "I want to come home, Thomas. Today." "Mom, we've talked about this. The house isn't ready." "Then I'll stay in one room. I don't care about construction noise." "It's not safe, Mom. You could get hurt." "I've lived in that house for 37 years. I know every creak and corner. I'm not afraid of my own home." I heard Camila say something I couldn't make out. Then Thomas's voice became firmer. "Mom, you need to be patient. This is hard for all of us. Camila and I are doing our best to handle everything." "What about what's best for me?" "This is what's best for you. You're safe there, you have people to talk to, activities to keep you busy. When you lived alone, you barely left the house." "Because it was my house." Thomas sighed, that long-suffering sound I'd heard too often in recent months. "Mom, I have to go. Camila's making dinner." "Camila's making dinner. In my kitchen. Probably sitting at my table, sleeping in my bed, living my life while I sat in this sterile room counting the days." After he hung up, I walked to the window and looked out at the parking lot. Cars came and went, visitors arriving to see their loved ones, taking them out for lunch or bringing grandchildren for hugs. No one was coming for me. That night, lying in the narrow bed with its scratchy sheets, I made a decision. If my son and his wife thought they could discard me like an old piece of furniture, they were going to learn something about the woman who raised Thomas Patterson from nothing into the man he'd become. The truth came in pieces like a puzzle I didn't want to solve. It started with Sandra, one of the night shift nurses who had a kind face and gentle hands. She'd been working at Sunset Manor for 8 years and had seen enough families to recognize the patterns. "Mrs. Patterson," she said quietly as she checked my blood pressure one evening, "I need to tell you something. Your son's payment situation." My chest tightened. "What about it?" Sandra glanced toward the door, then leaned closer. "He paid for 2 months up front when he brought you here. That was 6 weeks ago. We sent him 3 invoices since then. He hasn't responded to any of them." The blood pressure cuff felt like it was squeezing my entire body, not just my arm. "What does that mean?" "It means if he doesn't pay by next Friday, we'll have to contact Adult Protective Services. We can't keep residents whose families won't pay, unless they qualify for state assistance." State assistance. The words hit me like cold water. I'd worked for 43 years, paid taxes, raised a son, been a good citizen. Now I was facing the possibility of becoming a ward of the state because my own child had abandoned me. After Sandra left, I sat in my chair by the window trying to process what she told me. Thomas had stopped paying. He wasn't planning to bring me home. The renovations were a lie, and now he wasn't even pretending to care what happened to me. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in years. I got angry. I marched down to the main desk where Linda, the admissions coordinator, was typing on her computer. "I need to make a phone call," I said firmly. "A private phone call." Linda looked up, surprised by my tone. I'd been the quiet, compliant resident for 6 weeks. Not anymore. "Of course, Mrs. Patterson. You can use the phone in my office." I called information and got the number for Thomas's workplace. When the receptionist answered, I asked for Thomas Patterson in accounting. "One moment, please." "Mom." Thomas sounded surprised when he came on the line. "Is everything okay? You never call me at work. Why haven't you paid for my stay here?" Silence. Then, "What are you talking about? The nursing staff told me you've missed 3 payments. They're going to call social services if you don't pay by Friday." I heard him take a deep breath. "Mom, there's been some confusion about the billing. I'm handling it." "No confusion, Thomas. You stopped paying because you never intended to bring me home." "That's not true." "Then come get me today. Right now." Another pause. "Mom, I can't just leave work." "But you could leave your mother." "It's not like that." "Then what is it like, Thomas? Explain it to me like I'm not some senile old woman who doesn't understand what's happening to her own life." I heard Camilla's voice in the background, sharp and insistent. Then Thomas's voice became colder. "Mom, I'll call you tonight. We'll figure this out. Don't hang up on me." But he already had. That afternoon, Margaret from down the hall knocked on my door. She was 72, sharp as a tack, and had been abandoned by her own family 18 months ago. "Cheryl, can I show you something?" She led me to the computer in the common room, one that residents were allowed to use for an hour at a time. Margaret was surprisingly good with technology for someone her age. "What's your address?" she asked, opening up a browser. I told her, and she typed it into a search engine. Several results came up, but she clicked on one that made my stomach drop. Facebook. Camilla's Facebook page. There, posted 3 days ago, was a photo of my bedroom. But it wasn't my bedroom anymore. The walls had been painted a bright pink. There was a large dog bed where my dresser used to be. Toys scattered across the floor. And in the center of the room, a golden retriever wearing a pink bow. The caption read, "Princess finally has her own room. She deserves the best space in the house. Thank you to everyone who helped us make this transformation happen." 57 people had liked the post. 12 had left comments. "So cute. Lucky dog. She's living better than most people." I stared at the screen until the words blurred together. My bedroom. The room where I'd spent over half my life, where I'd kept my mother's jewelry box and my husband's photographs, where I'd folded Thomas's tiny clothes when he was a baby. It was a dog's room now. Margaret gently placed her hand on my shoulder. "I'm sorry, Cheryl. I thought you should know." I scrolled down through more of Camilla's posts. Pictures of her redecorating other parts of the house. My kitchen with new curtains. My living room with different furniture. She was erasing every trace of my existence one room at a time. But it was the comments on the dog post that broke something inside me. People congratulating Camilla on the beautiful renovation, asking where she got the paint, complimenting her decorating skills. No one asked what happened to the person who used to live in that room. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that pink room with the dog bed where my hope chest used to sit. The hope chest my mother had given me when I got married, filled with linens I'd embroidered by hand and letters my husband had written during his deployment overseas. Where was it now? Thrown away? Sold? Given to Goodwill like everything else that mattered to me? I was sitting in the common room at 2 in the morning, staring out at the empty parking lot, when Margaret appeared beside me in her robe and slippers. "Can't sleep either?" she asked, settling into the chair next to mine. "How do you stand it?" I asked her. "Knowing they don't want you anymore?" Margaret was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that surprised me. "I don't just stand it, Cheryl. I fight it." I turned to look at her. In the dim light from the hallway, she looked different. Not like a discarded old woman, but like someone with a plan. What do you mean? Come to my room. I want to show you something. Margaret's room was identical to mine, but she'd arranged it differently. Her desk was covered with papers, folders, and a small laptop I hadn't known she owned. I was a legal secretary for 34 years, she said, opening one of the folders. Old habits die hard. The folder was labeled, Elder Abandonment Legal Precedents. Inside were printed articles, legal documents, and handwritten notes in Margaret's careful script. Most people don't know this, she continued. But what our children did to us isn't just cruel. In many cases, it's illegal. She opened her laptop and showed me a webpage for something called the Elder Justice Act. Abandonment of a dependent adult is a criminal offense in most states. So is financial exploitation of the elderly, and in some cases what they call caregiver neglect. I stared at the screen trying to understand what she was showing me. You mean Thomas could go to jail? Maybe. But more importantly, there are civil remedies. Courts don't like it when adult children promise care and then abandon their parents, especially when property is involved. Property? My house. Margaret, the house is in my name. I never changed the deed. Her eyes lit up. Are you sure? When my husband died 12 years ago, the lawyer told me I didn't need to do anything. It was joint property, so it automatically became mine alone. Margaret leaned forward. Cheryl, do you have any idea what that means? I shook my head. It means Thomas has been living in your house without your permission. If you didn't give him legal authority to make decisions about your living situation, what he did constitutes unlawful imprisonment and property theft. The words sounded too big, too serious for my situation. I'm not sure I want to send my son to jail. I'm not talking about sending him to jail. I'm talking about going home. Margaret pulled out another folder. This one filled with business cards and letterhead from law firms. I've been documenting everything that's happened to me. Every broken promise, every unpaid bill, every lie my daughter told about why I couldn't come home. I've been building a case. Against your own daughter? For my own freedom. She showed me photographs she'd somehow obtained of her own house, now occupied by her daughter's family. Her furniture replaced, her belongings gone, her life erased just like mine. The difference is, Margaret continued, I kept records. I saved voicemails. I documented every conversation. And I found a lawyer who specializes in elder rights. She handed me a business card. James Morrison, attorney at law. Elder advocacy and family law. He takes cases like ours on contingency. That means he doesn't get paid unless we win. I held the card, feeling its weight in my palm. What would winning look like? Going home. Getting back what's ours. Making them understand that we're not disposable. For the first time in weeks, I felt something other than despair. It was small, fragile, but it was there. Hope. What would I need to do? Margaret smiled, and I saw the woman she must have been in her working days. Sharp, competent, not someone to underestimate. First, we call Mr. Morrison. Then we start documenting everything. Every conversation with Thomas, every broken promise. Every day you've been kept here against your will. What if it doesn't work? Then at least we tried. But Cheryl, what's the alternative? Sitting here waiting for them to remember we exist. I thought about Thomas's last phone call, the way his voice had gone cold when I challenged him. I thought about Camila posting pictures of my bedroom like it was some kind of victory. I thought about growing old in this place, forgotten and discarded, while they lived in my house and spent my money and told people I was better off here. When do we start? Margaret was already reaching for her phone. How about now? James Morrison looked exactly like I'd hoped a lawyer would look, gray-haired, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and the sort of calm confidence that comes from years of fighting battles for people who can't fight for themselves. His office was in a converted house downtown, warm and welcoming rather than intimidating. Margaret had driven us there in her surprisingly well-maintained Honda. Another thing I hadn't known about my new friend. Mrs. Patterson, Mr. Morrison said, settling behind his desk with a yellow legal pad. Margaret has filled me in on the basics of your situation. I'd like to hear it from you in your own words. So I told him everything. The fake renovations, the abandoned payments, the dog bed in my bedroom window. I told him about Thomas's evasive phone calls and Camila's cold dismissals. I told him about feeling like a prisoner in my own life. Mr. Morrison took notes, occasionally asking questions that seemed minor but felt important. Did you ever give Thomas power of attorney over your affairs? No. I never signed anything like that. Did you ever agree, in writing or verbally, to permanently move out of your home? Never. He said it was temporary. Do you have any documentation of this conversation? I shook my head, feeling defeated. It was just talking. Don't worry about that. We have other options. He pulled out a thick folder and opened it to a page covered in legal text. What your son has done falls under several categories of elder abuse. Abandonment, certainly. Possibly financial exploitation, depending on what he's done with your property and possessions. And what we call unlawful restraint. Keeping you somewhere against your will through deception. The words sounded serious, official. Real. What can we do about it? Several things. First, we're going to establish that you're mentally competent to make your own decisions. I'll arrange for an independent psychological evaluation. Margaret leaned forward. Why is that necessary? Because the first thing they'll argue is that Mrs. Patterson isn't capable of living independently. We need to prove that's not true. Mr. Morrison turned back to me. Second, we're going to investigate the current status of your property. Who's been paying the utilities, the property taxes, the insurance? If Thomas has been handling these matters without your explicit consent, that's a problem for him. And third, his smile was sharp. We're going to pay them a visit. 3 days later, I sat in the back of Mr. Morrison's car as we pulled into my driveway. Margaret had insisted on coming along for moral support, and I was grateful for her steady presence beside me. The house looked different. The flower boxes I'd maintained for 20 years were gone, replaced with modern planters that held plants I didn't recognize. The front door had been painted from blue to black. Even the mailbox was different. Remember, Mr. Morrison said as we walked up the front steps, you don't need to prove anything to them. This is your house. You have every right to be here. I rang the doorbell, my own doorbell, and waited. Camila opened the door, her face cycling through surprise, confusion, and something that looked like panic. Cheryl? What are you doing here? I live here, I said simply. She glanced nervously at Mr. Morrison and Margaret, clearly trying to figure out who they were and what they wanted. Thomas isn't home from work yet. That's fine. We're here to see you too. Mr. Morrison stepped forward and handed her a business card. James Morrison, attorney at law. I represent Mrs. Patterson in matters relating to her property and living situation. Camila's face went pale. I don't understand. May we come in? I asked. It was strange asking permission to enter my own home, but I wanted to do this right by the book, the way Mr. Morrison had coached me. Camila stepped aside, and I walked into my living room for the first time in 2 months. They changed everything. My furniture was gone, replaced with sleek modern pieces that looked expensive and uncomfortable. My family photographs had been removed from the mantel, replaced with abstract art I didn't understand. The walls had been painted from the warm yellow I'd loved to a stark white that made the room feel cold. Where are my things? I asked. What things? My furniture. My photographs. My mother's china cabinet. Camila twisted her hands together. Thomas said you didn't need them anymore. We donated most of it. Donated. The word came out flat. You gave away my possessions without asking me. You weren't using them. Mr. Morrison made a note on his pad. Mrs. Patterson, would you like to see the rest of the house? I nodded, though part of me dreaded what I'd find. The kitchen had been completely renovated. New cabinets, new appliances, new everything. My collection of vintage mixing bowls gone. The ceramic rooster my husband had bought me for our first anniversary gone. Even the kitchen table where Thomas had done his homework was gone. This must have cost a fortune, Margaret murmured. Where did the money come from? Mr. Morrison asked Camila directly. I don't have to answer that. Actually, you do. If you used Mrs. Patterson's funds or took out loans against her property without her consent, that's a felony. Camila's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and her face grew even paler. Thomas is on his way home. Good, I said. It's time we all had a conversation. Thomas burst through the front door 20 minutes later. His face flushed and his breath short like he'd been running. When he saw me sitting calmly on what used to be my couch, his expression went through the same cycle as Camila's had: surprise, confusion, and then something that looked almost like fear. "Mom, what are you doing here?" "I came home," I said simply. His eyes darted to Mr. Morrison, who sat with his legal pad open, pen poised. "Who are you?" "James Morrison. I represent your mother." Thomas looked at Camila, who was hovering near the kitchen doorway like she wanted to disappear. "Represent her for what?" Mr. Morrison's voice was calm and professional. "Your mother has been unlawfully confined at Sunset Manor under false pretenses. She never consented to permanent placement, and you failed to pay for her care while simultaneously renovating her property without permission." "This is ridiculous," Thomas said, but his voice cracked slightly. "Mom, you can't live alone anymore. Look what happened when you tried. You got confused, you fell that one time. "I never fell," I interrupted. "That was a lie you told the people at Sunset Manor to justify leaving me there." Thomas's mouth opened and closed. He looked at Camila again, seeking support that wasn't coming. "The renovations were for you," Camila said weakly. "To make the house safer." I stood up slowly, feeling stronger than I had in months. "Show me my bedroom." "Mom show me my bedroom, Thomas." The walk down the hallway felt like walking through a museum of my erased life. The family photographs that had lined these walls for decades were gone. The small table where I'd kept my keys and mail had been replaced with something modern and angular. Thomas opened the door to what had been my bedroom, and I stepped inside. It was exactly as I'd seen in Camila's Facebook post. Pink walls, dog bed, toys scattered across the floor. My hope chest was gone. My dresser was gone. The chair where I'd sat every morning to put on my shoes gone. "Where are my things?" I asked. "We stored them," Thomas said quickly. "Where?" Silence. Mr. Morrison made another note. "Mr. Patterson, your mother's personal property has significant monetary and sentimental value. Disposing of it without her consent constitutes theft. We didn't steal anything." "Then produce an itemized list of everything you removed from this room, along with documentation of where it's currently stored." Thomas and Camila exchanged glances. They couldn't produce that list because there was nothing to produce. They'd thrown my life away like garbage. "I want you both out of my house," I said quietly. "Mom, you can't be serious." "I've never been more serious about anything in my life." Thomas's face crumpled. For a moment, he looked like the little boy I'd raised, the child who'd come to me when he was scared or hurt. "Mom, please. We can work this out. Camila and I will move back to our apartment. You can have your room back. We'll repaint it any color you want." "With what money? You can't even pay for the assisted living you forced me into." "We'll figure it out." I looked around the pink room one more time, then walked back to the living room. Margaret was standing by the window, and she gave me an encouraging nod. "Mr. Morrison," I said, "what are my options?" He consulted his notes. "Several. We can file for immediate possession of the property, which would require them to vacate within 72 hours. We can pursue criminal charges for elder abuse and fraud. We can sue for damages, the cost of your care, the value of your disposed possessions, and compensation for emotional distress." Thomas sank into one of the expensive new chairs. "Mom, I'm your son.